I have to do the intro?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, welcome back to Sideninehomestead. I'm Jody.
I'm Sean.
And today we have an interesting topic to talk to you about GMO or genetically modified crops.
So we're going to break it into two parts where I'm going to talk about the difference between GMO and hybrid, Roundup Ready crops, chemical companies, and how they harvest wheat nowadays, and people that might be gluten tolerant and might not be. And then Jody's going to talk about
kind of more getting into cows specifically, because we do eat a lot of beef being on the carnivore diet. So just wanted to talk about that and how the GMO crops kind of relate into the cows. So stick around.
And the big topic though here too, don't stick around yet, is that, you are what you eat and you are what you feed your animals, right? So we're gonna try to really hit on that topic as well. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let me get started with the big difference between GMO, genetically modified organisms, right? And what hybrid means. And before we get too far into GMOs, let's talk about what a GMO isn't, and it's not a hybrid. So let's first talk about what a hybrid is, right? So what a hybrid is the natural pollination of two species of plants to come up with a new species of plant. And a perfect example of that would be like a seedless watermelon. That's not a genetically modified watermelon. That's a hybrid watermelon because it was done more or less through nature, right? Even though somebody sat there and pollinated it with different pollination to kind of weed out seeds, right? So that's hybrid. And to tell the difference between the two, let me tell you this story. So about 10 years ago, when I was in the office environment, I was sitting at my desk and there was a person in front of me. He was sitting at his desk and he had someone come over and they were talking and I'm sitting there doing my work, right? And, I had to listen to their conversation because they were saying all my buzzwords, right? The one guy was like, I'll never get organic food. What's the point of organic food, right? Like, I think it's just a waste of money. So then he went in on a rant about, genetically modified items. I'm okay with that because, the watermelons grow bigger and juicier and all the crops grow bigger and juicier and taste better. And then he was going on about how wonderful genetically modified items were. So me being me, I had to speak up. I was like, no, though you're confusing yourself, right? Because again, hybrid is the cross pollination to have a better variety of a plant, where GMO is genetically modifying that particular crop at the cell level, right? So there's a company that used to exist, which was called Monsanto, right? And that's a chemical company, and they hold a lot of patents on a lot of Roundup ready crops. And Roundup, of course, is what you spray on weeds to kill weeds. And what genetically modified means is they would take corn and genetically modify the seed at the cell level to kind of take this glyphosate chemical that is what is used to kill all the weeds. So they take the glyphosate chemical and they merge it at the cell DNA level of the seed itself. So that seed is no longer a God-given seed of like a water or of corn, right? So that seed is forever changed. So that seed is called Roundup Ready crops. They've done that to corn, to soybean, and the list goes on and forever. And they hold patents on that. And the whole purpose for Roundup Ready crops is that when you plant the crops themselves, you can go through with Roundup, glyphosate, and you could just completely douse the crops that are Roundup ready, and those crops will not die. And everything else completely dies. Our neighbor next door, a farmer leases his land. He's got 20 acres over there, and he has Roundup ready corn. And we went and looked, right, a while ago. And if you look at the ground, not one green speck of anything within this entire cornfield, because it's been completely covered. He went through and sprayed it. And the day he sprayed it, we locked our windows because it's just so bad for you.
Think about the tree.
Oh,
Yeah.
and our neighbor had a big, beautiful, I think it was a maple
I
tree
think it
or
was a
something
maple.
that was maybe 20 yards away from that field, completely killed that tree. Big, beautiful tree, dead. Um, if you spray Roundup on, vegetables, it will kill them, but not if they're Roundup ready vegetables. So, you have to be very careful on what you're eating. So hybrid corn, you can get organic corn, but if you just get regular corn, there's a good chance that it's Roundup Ready corn. It's in the DNA. And glyphosate is in like everybody's body, is what
Mm-hmm.
they say. It's in all the crops. It's not a good thing, right? And there's a lot of cereal products that are heavy with glyphosate. There's a lot of blogs, lots of websites, lots of people that you can follow that'll go into more detail. I don't want to go too much down that rabbit hole and get completely banned off of YouTube. But I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. You are what you eat, so be careful what you eat, right? Um, so that was the big thing is I just wanted to talk to people the difference between hybrid and genetically modifying, right? So if you see soybeans are huge in the genetically
Yeah.
modified world, so if you drink soy milk or if you have any soy products, if it doesn't specifically say organic, they're Roundup ready. It's Roundup ready soy. So whenever you buy, any type of soy product, you should always look for organic, any type of corn product. The problem is they put soy lactate and soy this and soy that in everything that
Mm-hmm.
you eat, right? I mean, look at margarine. We looked at margarine. Soybean oil, that oil. I mean,
Yeah.
soy is in everything and it's Roundup ready and it's glyphosate in everything. So be careful. And the newest thing that a lot of farmers are doing that grow wheat, for an example, instead of naturally letting the wheat dry out to harvest it, what they're doing now is they're spraying Roundup. This isn't Roundup ready wheat, it's just regular wheat that they spray with Roundup so they kill the entire field at the same time versus waiting so that way they can get another planting in. But that glyphosate, that goes to the inside the kernels of the wheat, right? I mean, it gets into the wheat itself. So when they harvest that wheat and they grind that wheat to make bread, to make cereals, and wherever else they put wheat, like in everything, the grains. So, all the cereals are contaminated. Everything's contaminated with glyphosate. So you just have to be very careful, read your labels,
Mm-hmm.
understand what you're eating, what you're putting into your body. You are what you eat, right? So you have to be very careful. Our last video, we kind of went through Sam's Club and we kind of were so shocked on a lot of the labels that we kind of read out loud on camera. So, I mean, you should watch that video. It was pretty eye-opening. And just one quick thing, like the salmon in that video,
Oh.
the light salmon color is only light orange because they add dye in their food, which are farm-raised salmon. So when you get farm-raised salmon, you're not getting the high levels of omega-3s and 6s and all that healthy benefits that you're eating salmon for on farm-raised. Flip it over, you'll see color added through dye. You want the nice dark orange wild-caught salmon. That's like an example of this. Read your labels, understand, do your own research, and make whatever best choices that you think you need to make.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's my biggest pet peeve is just, people saying, oh, genetically modified crops are wonderful. No, hybrid crops are wonderful, right? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
cross-pollinating, which is natural. It's not genetically modified. So right? And the whole glyphosate thing is that Monsanto was the chemical company that owned glyphosate. Well, they went out of business
I think
because
they were bought out,
they
weren't
were
they?
bought out by Bayer
Yeah.
Chemical, And there was a $10 billion lawsuit, and they lost against glyphosate because it causes cancer. And the $10 billion has been set aside for people that do, and all the farmers who just spray it without having hazmat suits on. I mean, they've all come down with cancer. So, not all of them, some of them have come down with cancer. So, you
But
know,
you know, that always bothered me when you would see someone spraying a field of the food that they're trying to feed us and they're in a hazmat suit. And it's like, what are you putting on my food that's okay for me to eat, but you can't let it touch your skin? I don't know.
I don't get that. I mean,
I don't know.
that's
Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
okay.
So when he was talking about you are what you eat, but you're also what your food eats. So, we've talked about us having chickens and how we grow them a lot of greens and we grow them, lots of fresh things because we want to make sure that they are as healthy as possible. We make our own chicken feed, and if we supplement that with any kind of store-bought feed, we do buy the organic feed to give them because we want to make sure that they're producing the best possible eggs for us to eat. So, when I started thinking about this, when we were talking about doing this video, one of the main staples of a carnivore diet, of course, is beef. And so cows, one of the main things that we're all eating is they have 4 stomachs. So you think, well, why would they have 4 stomachs? So when you start to think about that, it's just a way that they can properly digest all of their food. So when you're just taking in a lot of roughage, so the grass and weeds or whatever else they're eating as they're out in the fields, they need to really break that down. And that's going to take a lot. So just think of us as humans, if we're eating a lot of roughage, it's a lot of chewing, right? Like you just have to make sure everything is really broken down. And that's how you're going to get the nutrients. And it's the same with the cows. So they have 4 stomachs to kind of process it. And if you've ever heard the term, a cow chews their cud, there's a whole point to that. And that's part of their digestive process because it will come back up for them if it's not properly digested enough and chewed enough for them to be able to break it down and get all of those nutrients out of the cows. So that's why that happens. And it makes it really good for us. Now, the issue comes in when you start feeding cows corn. So what does corn do to the cows? It gets them bigger and fatter faster, which if you're a farmer, that's great, right? I want my cows to get as fast as they can to get to the point where I can take them to market or whatever they call it. Isn't that a song? I think there was like a nursery rhyme or something. To market, to market. Anyway, so that's why they do that. And it's cheap, right? And it's so fast. If you put a cow out to eat in a field, it's going to take them a long time to get to the point where they're ready to be harvested, so to speak. But if you feed them the corn, it's going to make them big and chubby and delicious. But at the same time, that's not their natural diet. So like just how we talk about the proper human diet for people is to eat an animal-based diet, that's not the same for cows. They are meant to eat grass and roughage and weeds and things like that that are out there. So if we're supplementing them with all this grains, it's not working in their digestive system that's well. So that's why so years ago we laughed because grass-fed beef has been around for a long time, but there was this commercial on for a very famous steakhouse, and they have a pretty good reputation. I think they're national or
I'm not sure
relatively,
if
but it's a very well-known place and on the higher end as far as a restaurant goes. And they had this beautiful steak on there, and it's all sizzling and has this delicious butter sauce and everything. And we're like, man, that looks good. And then they're like, we serve the best sweet corn finished beef. And we both looked at each other and we're like, what?
corn?
And this was years ago, like 10 years ago. And we're like, who puts that on a commercial? Like, I've never heard that.
Even back then, we knew that cows aren't supposed to eat corn.
Right. But anyway, so that was kind of surprising to us. And like, we've always tried to buy grass-fed, especially the ground beef. I've always bought that for years. But it is more expensive. And so that's kind of...
So there's grass-fed their entire lives, like
Yes.
grazing, and there's also grass-finished.
Yeah.
So talk about like the side effects of cows eating corn.
So when you have the corn, it can do lots of things. And it's kind of interesting when I started kind of researching this to see what would that effect be on a cow. Like, because if that's not their natural diet, so it's like people, right? We're meant to eat animals and animal products. What happens to a cow when they don't eat what their natural diet is? And I was really surprised to see that, well, not surprised, but kind of,
Shocked.
yeah, shocking. That was a good word. That of course it can cause health problems for the cows. So what does it cause? It can cause obesity in the cows, and you're thinking, well, that might not be that bad, but we don't want tons of fat. We want the marbling. We want the really good, intermuscular fat. I don't want, a layer of fat this thick on the outside of my steak. That's a you're paying still that hanging weight of the meat, so you're just paying for that fat. So what you want is that good marbling. In addition to that, it can also cause bloating, it can cause inflammation, and it can cause ulcers. Gee, those all sound familiar, huh? So like if you think about the standard American diet, let's think about what are the things that people are having: bloating, inflammation, ulcers, digestive problems in general, and that's really not good. Um, the other thing with it, so a cow has a neutral pH in their stomach. So humans have an acidic stomach naturally. So for us, we don't get quite as affected the way that cows can. But if they keep taking in all of this grain, it's really going to turn their stomach, and it's going to have, eventually it's going to start eating away at the lining of their stomachs. So that can cause a lot of problems. And again, getting into more of those inflammations, and that they can get into even more serious diseases that unfortunately can, end their lives. So,
So they get them fat fast to get them to slaughter and
exactly.
get them on your plate.
Because they want to make sure that they're not going to keep feeding them for a long time with the corn, because they know that their time is limited. They got to hurry up, get that corn in them, get them nice and fat, and then take them off.
See, but then the grass finished is they'll get them off of the corn and then they'll feed them grass, for a period of time before they actually take them to slaughter. So that way the inflammation goes down, everything goes down.
Yeah.
So grass finished, I mean, it's good.
It's better.
It's better for you, but
Yeah.
grass fed. So look for local farms.
Yeah, that's the key, I think, really. And talk to the farmers. I know pretty much every place I've ever lived in my whole life, there's always been a local farmers market, whether it's a something in your town where all the different vendors come in, or whether you just have a local farm that has their own little farm market. Go in and talk to them. You'd be surprised at, what they're willing to tell you. Like, because we had an issue, we were trying to can some corn the one year, and we had been doing it for the previous couple years. And then one time we decided to ask about it, and that's kind of led us down into a rabbit hole. But, you find out that the majority of farmers out there, if they're not a certified organic farm, are spraying all of their stuff with horrific pesticides. And I'm not saying that that's against the farmers. I mean, because you're fighting nature and all of the bugs and everything that's out there. But this is just all all the things that are kind of in the background. When you go into the store and you see these beautiful different produce things or tomatoes or whatever, and everything looks wonderful, but there's all this other stuff that happened to them before they get to that point.
So when they harvest the wheat and they spray it with Roundup, right? Like we said that the glyphosate goes into it at the core, and then when they process it, there's still glyphosate in it. And I'm always the canary in the coal mine when we go out, right? Because if we go somewhere and we have pizza, right, I can tell within an hour if that wheat was U.S. wheat, or if it was like wheat, flour that came from like Italy or something, right? Just because it took me years to figure out why I always would get heartburn when I ate this pizza versus that pizza. And then we
or
finally
pasta.
Or
Pasta was
pasta,
the big
yeah.
thing.
So even at home, right? If we get Barilla pasta, I
Mhm.
think they import from
Yes.
Italy. So I could eat that all day and I will never get any type of heartburn. But if you give me some generic brand, oh man, I'll get heartburn like you wouldn't believe. So, with that, I would have to take my Lanta right after I would eat any type of U.S. made pasta. So and the doctors were saying either take Prilosec or maybe you have some allergic reaction to gluten or something, right? Maybe it's an don't eat any more wheat products or bread or anything because you get heartburn. No. So as soon as I stopped eating, you know, as soon as I stopped eating US based flour, all,
Well, not necessarily. You started eating either imported pasta or organic
yes, that's
bread.
true.
Yeah, when we switched, I mean, not that we ever bought really bad bread back in the day, but when we switched to organic bread, like for sandwiches or whatever, it was a huge
Yeah.
difference.
So and I thought I was allergic to gluten, but no,
Hmm.
I'm allergic to glyphosate, and I'm a glyphosate detector. I could tell you if there's glyphosate in something. Give me an hour and I'll tell you. But
Yeah.
I mean, since we started this new lifestyle, the carnivore lifestyle, I haven't had any heartburn, probably because I'm not eating any wheat. Hey, it's a win-win. So yeah, that was another thing I wanted to bring
Yeah.
up.
And so it's interesting you say that because even though this is kind of a segue off of that, but the thing that always affected me was ice cream, which was really weird. I don't have a dairy intolerance, but when I eat ice cream, and I think it was a combination of the dairy with the sugar, oh, I mean, how many times did I go to the emergency room thinking I had like an appendicitis or something? I mean, 3 times. And it was ridiculous. So I'm like, okay. First I thought, and I never really was a big sugar person, but like twice a summer maybe we would go and get ice cream and it just wrecked me.
You would cough and cough and cough.
Oh, the coughing was horrible. And then sometimes if I ate too much, then the belly pain would come. And so then I learned, okay, probably can't have, I always tolerated yogurt, sour cream, cheese, no issues with that. But there's something with ice cream. And then I started thinking about it. It's probably the sugar because I never really ate a lot of sugar. I'm
You've never
not
eaten
a big
sugar.
sweet person. But again, when you think back to GMOs, most sugar, conventional sugar that's out there comes from beets. And beets are a very highly GMO crop. And so,
Roundup Ready crop is beets, and that's sugar
yeah,
beets,
that's
right?
that's where they get sugar from. It's not everyone thinks it comes from sugar cane. The majority of it out there does not. So I think for me, like the dairy probably was like right on the cusp, but then you throw all the sugar that's in an ice cream, and I was done. Like so, I know that I can't have that, and that's okay. I was not, like I said, not a big sweet person, but so we both have kind of experimented through the years to try to figure out what's wrong with why can't I eat this or is there another version I can eat or something that's not going to affect me? But when it really all comes down to are all these chemicals that are being utilized on our food supply and causing issues. And we're not the only ones. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there. I know personally know people that have been diagnosed celiacs, but their reaction is not the digestive stuff. They get rashes and skin issues and all of that. My thinking is that's probably the Roundup and all the pesticides. It's not as much the actual gluten itself. I mean, I don't know that. I didn't see their testings, but to see something like that, you would think because I know just myself with different skin issues, everything's completely gone eating the carnivore way. So,
Yeah, we've done videos with all the positives for us personally
yeah.
by doing, the meat.
Yeah. The meat.
The meat. Mm. Steaks for dinner tonight.
Wow, that wasn't even planned.
No. So, how do you want to end this? So, let's just do a quick wrap up. So the whole point of this is just read your labels, right? And understand the difference between GMO and hybrid and just make healthy decisions for
Yeah.
what you eat. And if you're not on a carnivore diet and you're keto, or if you're just, trying to do research on food,
Hmm.
we're kind of hoping that this video has helped, at least gave you some
Yeah.
ideas to go do your own research and understand, what's out there, what you're eating.
And I think it's a good general awareness and like really, I think it hits home for most people that we really want to shorten. What are they? There's a term for that. Like where you want to shorten your your circles, so to speak, or something. There's a term for it, like where you want to get all of your food sourced as close to home as you possibly can. So that's when you should talk to your farmers, go to your local farm markets, talk to people. Some of them maybe don't use the pesticides, but they can't afford the organic, certification process and all of that, because maybe it's just a really small operation. They can't do it, but you talk to them, they'll tell you. I was very surprised at all the times that we've asked people. They'll tell you whether they do or tell you whether they don't. No one seems to really hide that. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. And we know that a lot of people may watch this video who, like he said, is not carnivore, but you have children maybe that are not following that way of eating, or a spouse that maybe isn't on plan with you. So, try to make the best choices you can for everyone in your life.
Oh, I know. Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
The big thing that I just remembered what it was. So if you do get any types of fruits or vegetables that's not organic, the best way to get them clean, I mean clean, is you take like a pan or a bucket of some sort that you could put into your sink, and just regular vinegar. You put vinegar and water and you soak, for a little bit, just rough it up in there. Tomatoes, whatever type of fruit or vegetable, it actually takes and cleans and gets whatever surface pesticides, whatever dirt, whatever's on there off. And you'll be shocked when you take whatever it is out of the water. You'll see all the dirt and everything left behind. Like if you do grapes, grapes are the dirtiest.
They're so bad.
You'll be shocked. So just regular vinegar, and just bloop 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 bloop, and mix it with the water and just throw it in and soak it, and you could rub them a little bit and it takes off. It seems to have always worked for us. Plus, it cleans it if it doesn't get off all the pesticides, because sometimes it'll go into the skin, obviously. But that's
again,
one way.
You just try to do the best you can.
So we have vinegar under our sink,
Yeah.
and a little white tub that we just put in our sink whenever we used to buy fruits and vegetables. That's how we got them clean.
Yeah. So, all right. We hope you all enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and we will be back soon with some more carnivore and cooking things. And if you have any other ideas for some video suggestions or things you'd like to see or us to talk about, please put them in the comments below.
Thank you.
Thanks.